I'm Uzi Baram, and this semester I'll be offering Race and Ethnicity in Global Perspective. And for this mini class, I've titled it Eternal Return, Race and its Continuing Tragedies, because I've been teaching this course basically every other year for a quarter of a century. And it seems that each time I offer it, there's something in the news, in our lives, that really bring up issues of race. And it seems like it just constantly comes back. And so I want to wrestle this semester and in this mini class with that question of why. There's seemingly no end of publications, discussions, lectures, videos, arguments about social differences and inequalities. There's an outpouring of books on all sorts of issues surrounding race, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, both that see race continuing to come back as a concern, issues of racism, but also ways to overcome it. And one of the things we're going to struggle with is what are the questions to ask about race and its association with racism, and ethnicity and its association with ethnocentrism. I think many of us know why this is an obsessive intellectual issue. Race is at the cornerstone of issues of conquest, particularly of Native American lands and other indigenous people. It's at the cornerstone of enslavement, particularly chattel enslavement. It involves such tragedies as lynchings, exclusion from employment, exclusion, dispossession of homes. In a global sense, it very much leads into Auschwitz, the Shoah, the Holocaust, and the murder of millions of people, and the continuing genocides that we've seen in the 20th century and into the 21st century. Because of the tragedies or ramifications of those social differentiations we know as ethnicity and race, so many, and over so many generations, have wrestled and confronted race. I've put on the slide just some individuals, both with scientific vigor, poetic license, humor, try to wrestle, confront, and overturn racism. And as we go through the semester, I'm going to show and we'll work through how academics, specifically anthropologists, have talked, researched, and written about race. We'll think about what's effective. And frankly, as we can tell, and the fact that I've been teaching this course so often for so long, we haven't been effective. And so we do have to ask that critical question of why. One of those who asked is the parent of American anthropology and the figure who will be guiding us through much of this semester, Franz Boaz, who dedicated his career in creating an anthropology that was anti-racist and insisted that we should never tire of pointing out racism is an intellectual error and the differentiation of people and they're having different potential is a lie. In fact, what you see on the screen is his dying words, that urge to keep on fighting against racism. We also consider the lifetime work of W.E.B. Du Bois, the great sociologist, who engaged in that critical examination of racism, but also recognized the personal aspects of it. And in this quote, really embodies some of the emotional aspects, the tragedies of this concept that seems to be all around us and continually returning. How does it feel to be a problem? We'll make sure, though, to not just get lost in the academic discussions. The poet Maya Angelou recognized that as we struggle with these issues, still I rise. And that sense that we need that optimism, that hopefulness, and that sense of struggle, because that's also very much part of this history we'll go through for the concept of race. Much of the course will delineate the history of the race concept back several hundred years ago, moving systematically through the time periods to reach the present day and expose that history. James Baldwin, long ago, noted, to accept one's past, one's history, is not the same thing as drowning in it. It is learning how to use it. That goal fits the goals for the State University System of Florida. 3 years ago, the universities stated that we must move forward with greater resolve to battle racism and systemic inequalities wherever they exist. And this course is very much part of that endeavor. We will debate, argue, recognize the shortcomings of particularly the anthropology of this endeavor, to think about what we can say about race today. This is a cultural anthropology course focused on the present and looks at history to get us there. And we'll think about those issues of identity. Who is identifiable? Who gets to identify where the social lines and divides? To address those concerns, we need some commonality, and that comes from the readings from the course. There'll be a host of articles and book chapters available on Canvas. Our goal is not a survey of the entire planet, but to look at specific places, the United States, South Africa, China, the Eastern Mediterranean. And we'll do it with two books, one Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi, and Ethnography, Twilight Nationalism, that's focused on the Israeli city of Jaffa. One of the strengths of Stamped from the Beginning is we can think about how Ibram X. Kendi organized this very long history of the race concepts. He uses guides. He chooses Cotton Mather, Thomas Jefferson, William Lloyd Garrison, W.B. Du Bois, Angela Davis to help us go through the different time periods and what people are wrestling with in terms of social differentiations. And so we look at how Kendi provides these guides. We'll use Kendi as a guide, and we'll have others as well. Franz Boaz, who I've mentioned, Audrey Smedley, who's an anthropologist of the race concept, Benedict Anderson, who's a political scientist who wrestled and defined nationalism, Bell Hooks, who's a great Black feminist intellectual, and use insights from ethnographies. All those readings are going to help us understand how difference looks around the world. The ethnography itself of Jaffa gives us an ethnographic perspective, in-depth one, of an Eastern Mediterranean city, but that is part of this anthropology. We'll think about real people, real people's lives, how they're impacted, how they create, how they sustain, how they resist those concepts of social differentiation and social identifications. The tragedies of race include ethnic divides that get to the extremity of genocide, the destruction of a whole group of people. And the 20th century and the early 21st century have examples, and is tragedies we're going to have to grapple with. Trying not to make this just frankly depressing, we'll think about those dynamics, but also look at examples around the world and for our case studies of tolerance, coexistence, and cosmopolitanism. We'll have the opportunity to be uplifted by positive examples as well as grappling with the sadder, tragic examples. For the course, and what holds it together is it's an intellectual history of the race concept. We'll look, following a host of scholars, and I'll cite them, and you'll read some of them, and we'll debate and argue with them, because they are guides. We're going to look at how the race concept developed in North America and then spread around the world. We'll think about how ethnicity focuses on boundaries and divides, and we'll look at nationalism and how much it seems to be a type of identity today, very much in the line of how race was and continues to be used. And so importantly, we're going to look at theories, so many theories, of how to make sense of divides. We'll look at some of the major kind of approaches people have taken, a primordialist approach that assumes that ethnic identity is essential social relations. It is the core notion. We'll look at its opposite, an instrumentalist approach, that people don't fight over culture, but fight using culture. And we'll consider those who say, this is way too confusing, there's too much, let's just give up trying to make sense of it. But as we go through it, I think you'll see how those debates build on each other to get us to our current discourse, and hopefully give us the critical tools to really expose what's going on in today's discourse on race and ethnicity. You will find that we'll try our best to understand the basis of differences, and the methodology is going to be historical anthropology, thinking about things chronologically in terms of real people's lives and how the ideas that are at a particular time influences others. And we'll look through how many of these ideas have shifted over time from explanations of differences, why some are privileged, some are not, why some are rich, some are poor, why some have opportunities, some don't, why some can reach their full potential and some are stuck in a social cell that doesn't allow them to reach their full potential, that the explanations have ranged over the supernatural to nature, to biology, to genetics, to history, society, and we'll keep on asking the anthropological question, and this is from the American Anthropological Association, how different are we? And I think you're going to realize the answer is actually pretty profound. So as we go through the semester, we'll look at social divides and the changing meaning of race, and a lot of it's going to be a critique of anthropology. Anthropologists have created these groups of people, in many ways created the groups of people, and put them in hierarchies that haunt our current endeavor. We'll look at race in historical perspective, focused on the United States of America with the exploration of social groupings created over the centuries. We'll look at social divides in power, separations in the role of the state, right? The jargony concept of the government. We'll look at the multiplicities of that from that term ethnicity. It has so many different aspects, and we'll try to make sense of that. And because again, this course is not just a critique, but it's trying to wrestle with the intellectual history of race in order to make different possibilities arise so people can reach their full potential. All people can reach their own personal potential. We'll look at alternative approaches to the classifications of people, and we'll look at, again, places like South Africa, China, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Cyprus, and Israel. You'll see over and over again how central to intellectual history of race is anthropology. And sometimes we'll do it in a way that will lighten the mood, but of course none of this is a laughing matter. I'll highlight, although I won't be restricted to, the very simple findings by anti-racist anthropologists, right? And you're going to hear this a lot because it's so simple, but it's seemingly so important. I think you'll see this as we wrestle with the discourse. Race has no biological basis. Race helps some, hurts others. Legacies of inequalities continue to be a significant feature of social identities and has continuing social consequences. And while the correlations have changed over the ages, what connects people to certain identities, the inequalities continue. For the course, I have some requirements. I expect you to attend each and every class. Right? I'm a stickler for attendance. This is a discussion. You need to be there to be part of the discussion, to complete the readings for that day and be prepared to discuss the readings in your own research, right? You want to bring people together in this, and the success of this course is predicated on engaged students. You need to make this a priority. It's going to be a lot of work. Some of it's going to be challenging intellectually and emotionally, but I need that to happen for the course to work. Everyone needs to participate and share their diverse viewpoints and hopefully get to a larger holistic view. There's going to be a semester-long semester project. I'll ask you to pick a case study. Anthropology loves case studies. And so early in the term, you'll choose a case study and have a step-by-step process that you can find on Canvas that will lead to a final paper or project. You'll have opportunities to present your research to the class before the semester ends, to share your insights, and hopefully through the different examples, we'll see some of the range of variation for the issues of social divide around the world. If you're wondering if the course is for you, well, I've set this course up with some kind of parameters in mind. It's an anthropology course. It's an upper level cultural anthropology course. So there's some expectations that you're interested in anthropology and you have some background in it, although it's not a requirement. It's part of international studies. And so this is a chance for those folks in international studies to get a cross-cultural exploration of social identities. And if you're studying race and ethnicity in whatever ways across this campus, this gives you the anthropological perspective. I suspect it's going to be a relatively small class of 10 to 12, but as many seats as we have in the classroom, I'm not capping it beyond the size of the classroom itself. I just want to have it small enough so everyone can have a voice every class session and really explore these issues and experiment with the different ideas that we'll be presenting over the term. I started this mini class by knowing the intellectual fervor that has gone on for a while and continues on in the issues with race and ethnicity. Of course, the goals tend to be to overcome racism and ethnic divides. And while we'll be struggling with some of the most horrific actions by people against others, and that sense that people cannot reach their full potentialhood, not allowed to reach their full potentialhood, we're not going to focus only on that. We also are looking through lenses of optimism and hope. And we're going to be hopeful that through scholarly efforts, we can find avenues to, as the state university system asked us to, battle racism and systemic inequities wherever they exist. That ultimately we want to understand this long history and its variation across the world in order to enact change. And I will say clearly, I've been teaching this course I've taught this course many times, we haven't reached that. And so we'll think hard about where it is within this material that has possibilities and where are the shortcomings, what are the alternatives to what you see in the scholarship we'll go through over the semester. If that difficult task interests you, the class meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:30 in College Hall 214. To access the Canvas, please do email me at baram@ncf.edu. And I'll ask for the first class that you read 2 essays. And actually it exemplifies the approach. You'll find over the semester that some of the work that you'll be reading I really appreciate and inspired by. Some I think is important that you read because it's part of the scholarship, and others frankly I disagree with. So for the first class, you'll be reading a piece by Stephen Jay Gould that really I think gets at the heart of the issue. As an anthropologist, although Stephen Jay Gould's a biologist, we're very much in agreement. Today around the world we have Homo sapiens sapiens. All humans are Homo sapiens sapiens, and as Gould will argue in this short essay, human equality is a contingent fact of history, and we'll discuss what that means and why it's meaningful. We'll also look at an interview with Ibram X. Kendi that lays out an argument that I actually disagree with it. I find Kendi's book Stand from the Beginning to be an important book. It's discussed a lot. It's really helpful for going through the history of the race concept, particularly as it develops in North America. But I'm not teaching this class just in favor of his argument. As you see in the title, Education and Love Are Not the Answer. I don't think he's right on that. And we'll hopefully the essay will get the interview will give you a chance to see that argument, and then we can discuss it all through the semester. Please treat all the readings as open for discussion, consideration, support, or critique, because we're not just looking for an answer, we're looking for that discussion, that discourse, and to be part of a larger conversation. I look forward to starting that conversation with you on Tuesday. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate your time. Goodbye.